This is Elizabeth Gearhart with Fireside. I'm here with Jeff Goodman, who is with Brown, Harris, and Stevens Real Estate. For the last 4 years, Jeff has gotten national and local recognition for his creative, out-of-the-box, incredible way he deals with the real estate business in New York. And he's got so much going on. It's really cool. So hi, Jeff.
Hello, Elizabeth. How you doing today?
Good. So tell me all about everything.
Well, I am a real estate agent. I work in residential real estate. I help people mostly buy and sell, though I do a little bit of leasing work as well. And a number of years ago, I embarked on some special programming that connects people to really wonderful things and essential things about New York. I just don't help people buy homes in the city. I help them really get connected to the things that makes New York special. And one of those is neighborhoods. I started a walking tour program, a live event program 6 or 7 years ago. And we explore neighborhoods. We explore lots of different neighborhoods. And they're a great way for people, mostly locals, to actually explore a neighborhood. I have great tour guides. I don't give the tours, I host them. Believe it or not, the marketing model is Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I'm Mutual of Omaha, and my amazing tour guide, Joyce Gold, is my Marlon Perkins. I don't give the tours, I host them. I'm not
And
an
New York
expert.
is the jungle.
Yeah, you might be. Well, not as much lately, but it had been, in years past. And in fact, 25 years ago, I don't know that it would have been as pretty in some places to take people around on an afternoon on a weekend. But it would have been interesting anyway. Look, I grew up in the city. I came of age in the 70s when it was gritty, and so it didn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered to me.
Right. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I've been to New York many times. I actually even did a tour bus with out of town relatives, but I think your walking tours sound, I really want to do one. I think they sound like fun. I think once this pandemic breaks and loosens its hold, I'm going to grab my husband and in we go.
They're great. They're great things to do. The live tours always happen on Saturday afternoons at 2 o'clock. And unlike most tours that people are interested in, and this is saying nothing bad about them because I go on it myself. You show up to a tour. There could be 5 people, 10 people, maybe 15, and you're really excited about the subject at hand. And tour guides, they're almost all great, but the attention is solely on the tour guide and the content. If you're lucky, you might recognize someone, but mine is a series. And because I pay the tour guide and I invite everyone on my mailing list to come, people bring friends, they bring relatives. I have typically between 60 and 80 people on each tour. If you can imagine, that's like a roving party. It's a lot of people walking around. But the thing that also makes it unique is I host a reception after it. I find a local watering hole or restaurant near where the tour ends, arrange it in advance. I have several sponsors who buy snacks and appetizers for people who come on the tour. So it's a chance for most people, if they want to stick around, they get off their feet. They get to eat something. Most of them drink something. Frequently it's alcoholic by this time on 4 o'clock on a Saturday. And but people then also get to socialize, because when you're on a tour, maybe you get to speak to somebody, say hello, but everyone's attention is to the person on stage, to that tour guide. Whereas the receptions, people hang around for an hour and a half, and just maybe they talk to the tour guide, maybe they socialize with the people they brought, or they also meet other people. And since I have a lot of regulars on my tours, most people who come on the tours meet people that they've already met before. So it's a warm, fun, interesting, and wonderful part about New York. One of the things about New York, every place has a lot of places have great history. New York is so big, and we go back to, there were native peoples living here way before Europeans came. But recorded history started 400 years ago. And we were a Dutch colony for 40 years before we were an English colony, and then we became independent. So there were all those layers of the Dutch coming, and who were the Dutch and what did they do, and then when the English took over, and how did things change in the neighborhood. Although you really can't see much from the Dutch period, a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of the history of neighborhoods encompass the story of the Dutch who came here first. So it's there are very few places that have as fertile a field to till a tour business, I think, than a tour program than New York, because it's so big. There are so many wonderful neighborhoods, and there's just so much to do.
Well, that leads me to a question. Do you go to all five boroughs?
No, that's a really good question. I'm limited to two things. One, where I do business,
Mhm.
because it's a promotion event for my business. So although it's not real estate focused, if someone's interested in it, I want to be able to have that connection to that neighborhood. But
Right.
there's also another very important thing about it, is that it's not just the tours that I do. It's showcasing Joyce Gold. So there are neighborhoods that I want Joyce to do, but that aren't in her roster. So we don't do them. I've been lucky in that Joyce over the years has added probably about a half a dozen neighborhoods to her roster that she did not have, but because I asked her to do them, and she researched them a little and decided that they would also be good for her general tour offerings. She's incorporated new tours into the neighborhood. In fact, there are a number that we're shooting right now for the virtual events.
So what neighborhoods do you operate in?
Wow, it's another good question. I work in all of Manhattan. I'm a native New Yorker. I know a lot of neighborhoods like the back of my hand. I work in all of Manhattan. Probably I have helped people look for and buy real estate in 2/3 of Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn originally.
Okay.
Uh, a little bit of Queens. In New Orleans, we'd call it the sliver by the river. It's the four neighborhoods that are adjacent to the East River, and that's only because uh, uh, our trade organization, the Real Estate Board of New York, is there, and it's easy to deal with the brokers. And now also, I've helped people buy in the Bronx. I'm actually having a closing on Friday in Riverdale, and that's with the second buyer in that building. Her sister bought in that building a couple of years ago. So I really, have planted, my shingle up in Riverdale. So I'm not, Elizabeth, I'm not focused on one particular neighborhood. I mean, I know New York so well, and there's so many wonderful places that I help people buy and sell real estate in.
So do you get people that are moving to New York from, let's say it's a corporate transfer, and they've never been to New York and they have to buy a house or find a place to live and it's their first time? Do you get those people on your tours?
No, although I do have relocation folks who are on my mailing list. Most of the people who come on my tours already live in New York,
Okay.
and people who relocate here, most of them don't buy homes right away, because buying a home in the city or one of the suburbs, it's not like going to a smaller place where for a couple of $100,000 you have a big home. It's a big investment. We also have there are higher transactional costs here. So most people who relocate, they'll rent for a while. They'll get the feel of the city, and determine where they want to live. I have had people come on my tours who have recently come to New York, but most of them are people that I have long-term relationships with. And who just, they're New Yorkers. They just, love being here, and they can't get enough of the city. They eat up any content they can get about the wonderful places in the city.
Well, I think that what's unique about what you're doing is that you delve into the history so deeply. I I don't know any of this history. I mean, I always thought it was like the British came over, but then someone said to me once, "Oh, it's the Dutch," and then but you have the whole thing. So I think that's what a lot of people would find really fascinating, right?
Well, it's two facets of it. One is, I mean, a lot of people love history, and people aren't going to come on a walking tour of a place that has some history if they're not interested in the history, unless where are the latest clubs and who's playing at them. But even so, if you go on a tour of punk music in New York, that's history now, because that was from the 70s. I remember it well, but it's still history.
Yeah.
But another thing about tours that makes them good, really, I think, colorful, is people love stories. They
Mhm.
just don't want to know, okay, who was it who came and what did they do? And the fact that someone may have done something, but it's a story around those things. It's reading a letter. It's telling the backstory. It's sort of giving. It's trying to give people a sense of who somebody was. Their personality.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
like, for example, just to throw in one of my favorite stories is someone by the name of Eliza Jamel, Betsy Jamel. Uh, not going to go into all the details of her life. She was a fascinating New York figure. She was married to Aaron Burr, but her first husband, she married a French American who'd become a citizen. He was a wine merchant. Well, the story goes that they were keeping company, as my grandmother would say. And then he got a message that she was ill. He went to see her and said, "I'm sorry, you're gonna, you're not well." And there was a priest there, and she said, "Oh, my only wish is to die an honest woman." And he said, "Oh, if I could do it, I would." And she said, "Well, there's a priest right here." So, you know, and, it was the fastest recovery, anyone had made at that time, after that. But, it's not just that she was sick, she told, and she married him. It's the story about what happened in the room. And, maybe there were some historical liberties that were taken with the tale, but people love hearing that stuff. And when you're standing before the mansion that she lived in, and where there were purported sightings, dozens of years ago of a ghost of someone on the porch who was who was yelling at kids, and there was no one in the house. I mean, that just, that really helps to bring a lot of color and excitement to these tours.
Absolutely. It sounds like so much fun. And now you've actually grown this into a podcast as well, right?
Yes, I have actually a live radio show and podcast, and now it's video because it's Facebook Live. Um, I've done the tours for 7 or 8 years, and about 2.5 years ago, a friend of mine, Noreen Sumter, who's a life coach, she had a radio show called Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way. Noreen had been, I know Noreen through the Chamber of Commerce. She'd been on my tours, and she's met people, and she's networked at the events I have. And one day she said, "I'd love to have you on the show." And I thought, sure, I'd love to do it. On the way into the studio, I thought, what the hell am I going to talk about for an hour? It's a long time. But Noreen is a great host on the show. The time went like that. And the next day, the owner of the station said, "Hey, Jeff, whom I had known, I forgot that we were connected through another network. He said, "You have a good voice for radio." He said, "I have an open slot on Tuesdays." He said, "Why don't you think about doing a show?" He said, "But don't do a show about real estate. Take the content that you have in your events and bring it to a different medium." So originally it was supposed to be a show only about neighborhoods, mostly about New York neighborhoods. And I started to do other things, like I had a show about presidents on President's Day and show about the women's suffrage movement in New York. But as I was going on, there are only so many neighborhoods in New York, even though we have a lot of them. So now the content is, we cover neighborhoods, but it's not like most of the content is neighborhoods. It's about half. Half of the shows will be about a particular neighborhood, and then the other half of the show will be an interesting thing about New York. Like tonight's show is actually going to be how New Yorkers respond to COVID. It's not such a great topic, but I mean, it's an important topic to talk about. But I'm going to be speaking with the Manhattan Borough historian, who's going to talk about how he and others are documenting New Yorkers' response to the pandemic, which will be a historic record, and in conjunction with the Museum of the City of New York, and also speaking to a program director at a local community organization, the YMYWHA in Washington Heights, and she's going to take us through all the specific programs. And it's not, there's really in-depth stuff that, you probably would not have known about that. And so she's going to be speaking about her organization's response to the pandemic and how they're helping New Yorkers.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's timely, and people are interested in history, but they're also interested in what's going on right now and what people are doing about it. And I started Fireside shortly before the pandemic hit, and I feel like people have changed. And so some of the early interviews I did, we redid, and because people at that point in March, a year ago, weren't in 2020, didn't know what they were going to do. March 2021, they figured it out. So we take off the old interview where they're talking about, like, think I might do this, and we put on the new interview where they're like, "Hey, this is how I came through," And so I think it's very relevant. I think it's great that you're doing that. So,
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I studied history in college, and my unrequited career is it would have been great to be an historian. I didn't do that for a number of reasons. I'm very happy what I'm doing now, but it's a way for me to, it serves multiple functions, Elizabeth. It Aside from supporting my brand and becoming an integral part of my brand and something that nobody else does. I mean, it is unique, at least in New York. It has enabled me on a personal level to get to herald and with other people and to be fully engaged in things that I love so much, which are this incredible city, as well as the history of the city and its neighborhoods and the people. I don't derive any revenue directly from any of this. It's all programming and support of my real estate business. But as much as I love to help people find homes and to see people's excitement at the closing table when they get the keys and it's like, we have our lives, Jeff. Thank you for helping us create this. I'm as much as a fish in water, walking around and hearing Joyce Gold and seeing my guests, interest and excitement, and also speaking to the radio show has been a little different because I've come to meet a lot of people and got to get to know a lot of people who were experts and passionate about things in the city that I didn't even think of when I first took on the show. It's been an incredibly rewarding experience, even though it is a little time consuming, and I devote a significant part of my time to coming up with the ideas and to preparing for the show. It's so incredibly rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life.
Well, at our age, you better be having fun.
Yep. Right.
Hopefully we paid our dues so we can do something we enjoy.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm not going to tell people how old I am because then it might give away the shop about how old you are. So
I don't care.
I think we're around the same age,
I think so. But well, I think one thing that's really important about what you're doing is history can be boring or not. And you're the or not, because you make it come alive with these stories, like the forced marriage on the deathbed.
Well, actually, it's not me. It's Joyce. That's her style, and I put her on stage. I have her do the tours, and I host them. But it's not just the tour because some tour guides are a little dry, but others are colorful. But Joyce is she's an amazing storyteller, and she's been doing this I used to say she used to be doing it for 40 years, but now it's 45, I think. She's just amazing.
So I have one question. So if you have 60 people on a tour, say, how do they all hear what she's saying?
That is a good question. It's been the most I've had is 95 people. Joyce she wears 2 microphone devices. She has 2 microphones. One of them goes to a speaker, which she has wrapped around her torso. But the other is a Bluetooth speaker. And it's about the size of this box. I carry it around.
Okay.
In fact, if you ever see a picture of my tours, frequently, you'll see me standing with the thing on my head because that enables the sound to carry more. And one of the things that one of my jobs during the tours is, when we're moving along, I have to make sure everyone's within earshot, but then I have to position, I just can't hang around. I got to move around and position myself to think, okay, Joyce is over there. My speaker is louder than hers. Where do I position it? And sometimes she'll start and I'll move around a little bit to make sure that, I can see people's reactions if they can hear or not, or if they're having trouble hearing. And then I, also adjust the volume. And sometimes I have to adjust the frequency of the signal if it's not coming through the way it needs to.
So do people wear a name tag or like a tag or a shirt or something to show they're with the tour?
Okay. No, because people, unlike some events where you can register on a website, the way people register for mine is because it's by invitation only. It's not open to the public, although anyone can come. Really, they respond to me. I put their name on an Excel sheet, and when they come, I know most of the people who show up. It's not advertised to the general public. And if someone is hanging around, I'll go, "Oh, are you here for the tour?" And if I don't know them, I'll say, "Oh, I'm Jeff," and they'll go, "Oh, Jane sent me." It's like, "Oh, right, Jane Smith." I don't know Jane Smith. I'm just saying that innocuously. And so, and occasionally, actually more often than not in the course of the tour, someone will tag along.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yep. And what do? I don't charge for the tours. I go, oh, here's my card. This is I'm Jeff Goodman from Brown Harris Stevens. This is, the tour is part of my real estate business. Join us. Come on, and they come. And in fact, I have some people on my mailing list who just happen to stumble on the tour. And now if they're not regulars, they come to some tours, and, eventually, hopefully, they'll think of me if someone they know is in need of moving or buying or selling, and I'll be top of mind for them.
Well, I think that's brilliant. Honestly, I think it's brilliant, because you're the only one doing it and the tours are free. That's really cool. And I can see, you could try to charge for them, but then you get into this whole other thing. But you probably are getting the return on this investment because it's coming back to your business.
Absolutely. You're right. I don't charge for them because, number one, I wouldn't get as many people. It's almost like the old, in like television, you provide the content and people sit through the commercials. It's
Right.
the same. I provide the event. I have 5 minutes of announcements beforehand. I thank the sponsors. I talk about my social media. I talk about upcoming tours, and then I give a little commercial plug for my business. That's the commercial they have to sit, people sit through. But as far as I know it's really impactful and it's effective, Elizabeth. I just don't know how much.
Right. Well, it's hard.
Most people, it's like most people who tune into a television show are not going to buy that product. It's the same thing with me. Most people who come on the tours, even people who love it and who've complimented me, have not recommended someone to me, and that's all right. It doesn't matter. It's like, even for the people who will never ever refer any business to me, if someone new comes and they strike up a good acquaintance, and that person is not even thinking of me as a service provider, it's still mission accomplished. They're part of the atmosphere, they're part of the environment. They're getting something that they enjoy because I know them, or they got introduced to me through someone we know. And it's just part, it's just, I don't want to say giving it away without expecting anything in response, but it's part of the package. And I know that it has an impact.
Well, it's hard to calculate ROI on any type of marketing. I mean, you can sometimes if you use tags on your social media, all this other stuff, but it's still really hard to get a handle on true ROI. And this, I think, does come back to you in one way or another. And I think that your radio show and podcast comes back to you one way or another too, because if I'm going to go buy something in Manhattan, I want the guy that gives the tours. I want the guy that knows everything about Manhattan. Right.
Well, truth be told, I know that I get more referrals from the tour program. The radio show and podcast, I have between 4,000 and 6,000 listeners a month. I don't know most of them. A lot of them don't live in New York.
Right.
There are some people from overseas. And so this, in the walking tour, when there are 80 people there, I say hello to everybody. I look in their eyes. Most people, everyone on that tour will have met me if they didn't know me, if somebody else brought them, It's not the same with the radio show and podcast, but from a business perspective, what the radio show and podcast do is they help my brand, I think, with people who already have a relationship with me, already know me, and also with people who may not know me, and like in connecting and networking in the worlds that we're all in right now. If I meet someone, like, what do you do? What's your elevator pitch? Well, I mean, no one says it that way, but you get 30 seconds to share what's distinct about you. See, it's easy to say, I'm a real estate agent. I help people sell their homes and get a lot of money for them, and I help people create their dreams in buying homes. But it's another thing to be able to say, I'm a licensed real estate agent. I do something different from every other agent. I connect people to the great things about New York, and I share that passion with them. And I do it through two ways. One, I host a walking tour series. And the second is I have a weekly radio show and podcast that focuses on great things about New York, including its extraordinary neighborhoods. And so when you say that, not to put myself in any kind of par with the advertising shop that came up with the E.F. Hutton commercials, remember those, in the restaurant, but when you say that, it doesn't just go by almost everybody, they go, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's unique. Tell me more about it. And then it gives me a chance to differentiate myself and also share something that I'm passionate about. And the passion is something that's also very, very electric, I think.
So how do I get on your list?
You're on it. But how someone can get on my list, they can drop me an email and I'll be happy to put them on. It's J Goodman at BHS USA, Brown Harris Stevens USA for our great country, .com.
So, okay. So J Goodman
at bhsusa.com. Also, if you Google Jeff Goodman Real Estate, New York, I mean, my pages, my tours will come up, and then my email address is peppered throughout those sites. You could just drop me a note. Or if someone wants to give me a call, I'll even, since you're asking me for a plug, my phone number is 646-306-4761. And you can catch my show every Tuesday night on 7 o'clock live on talkradio.nyc, www.talkradio.nyc, the Talking Alternative Network.
Cool. Well, when are you going to start doing tours again?
Good question. My tour program is almost year round. Usually, the neighborhood tours are from the spring to the fall. Usually in the winter, I have 2 indoor events. I have a series of talks in a restaurant in January, and I usually do a tour of Grand Central in March. So I have programming throughout the year. Right now, I'm actually doing online programming, which people can come to and get invited to. In fact, I just had a tour last Wednesday. I do them about once a month now, where I do a videotape of a much shortened tour that Joyce is doing. It's just a snippet, it's a flavor, so people can get some interest and then hopefully go on the tour when we, when we're back touring. And the second part of the program was in celebration of Black History Month, was a talk about Harlem nightlife, past and present, the jazz clubs, the dancing clubs, the balls. So I'm still actually engaged in that online content. Well, it's not online; it's virtual content. They're Zoom meetings at the moment.
Okay, so we don't know when we're going to be able to gather in large groups again.
No.
We're hoping maybe late summer. I don't know.
I hope so. Worst case scenario, I'm thinking no more live events this year. I've got to wait until the word is that it is as safe as it's going to be for people to get together, and that everyone who wants a vaccine. This is my personal view. Anyone and everyone who wants a vaccine was able to get it, and enough time has passed where they've built up immunity.
Right.
And as long because if there are baseball games going on, there's no reason why people can't come to a walking tour. People can wear masks. They can, unlike at a baseball game where you're like, you bum. I've been to Yankee Stadium. A lot worse gets yelled at the crowds,
So we're taping this right now in March 2021. So if this stays on the site as is, which we could do an updated video once you start doing tours again if you want, but by March 2022, you should be starting your spring season. Is that when you normally start?
Yeah, well, the tours usually start in April. Because I don't want to, I don't like to have a shoulder season when it could be, snowing and cold. 45 is the lowest temperature where I think it's comfortable for people to get, bundled up and walk around,
right,
without being frigid, not having to wear gloves. But actually, I'm doing, I'm doing this online content once a month, so my program is ongoing. And if someone hears this and Yankee Stadium's open again, then my tours will be on, as long as Yankee Stadium's not open in the winter. But
yeah, I can hardly wait. I'll go online and watch her online, and I'll have my husband come with me because he likes that stuff too. But
it's a lot of fun. It's not the same, obviously. The tour event, my evening virtual events are an hour and 15 minutes. But the tour events, the tours are 2 hours, and then the receptions for as long as people want to stay. I've been still entertaining people at the bar after 7 o'clock on some of the tours, because people are just having such a good time, and it's not, and we're just keeping the party going.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. It's a great, and I feel really lucky, Elizabeth, that I sort of happenstanced into something where I can not only provide the content and the appreciation through the walking tours, but now by design, there's this additional aspect so people can become really connected. I mean, one of the most wonderful things about people, especially in the city, is to be connected with each other. And, it'd be one thing to have a tour and for people maybe to exchange a phone number and go away, but to facilitate, people being connected with each other on a personal level, that's just, it's to me, it's golden. I love facilitating that. And also from a business aspect, it's become part of my brand.
That is excellent, Jeff. Well, congratulations on such out of the box creative thinking. You really are one of a kind.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've been called unique before. So.
On that note,
On that note, yeah.
get a hold of Jeff and go on a tour. If you're looking for New York real estate, he's your guy.
Love to have you.